we had an earlier meeting with the Secretary. This hearing of the Committee on Energy of the Senate is hereby called to order. The Chair would like to recognize the presence of the Secretary of Energy, Carlos Jericho Petilla, of the ERC, Chairman Jenny Dugut, Ms. Aina Asirit, and Ms. Deborah Layugan. Which one is Deborah? Okay. Representing the Bisaun, Mr. Mandy Ledesma, Mr. Elmer Cadano, and Mr. Attorney Daniel Ann Rubinos. From the National Power, Mr. Urbano Mendiola, Vice President for Corporate Affairs. Mr. Mendiola, thank you. From the National Transmission Corporation, Mr. Rolly Bacani. Representing the NEA, Ms. Edith Bueno. From the PEMC, Ms. Melo Campo. And representing the PEZA, Ms. Lilia De Lima. Is Ms. De Lima here? Would you like to give your name so that we may record it?
Sir, good morning. I'm Theo Panga. I'm the Deputy Director General for Policy.
Theo?
Panga.
Pangas?
Yes, sir. DG De Lima is currently in Japan for an investment mission, sir.
Good. Representing the Philippine Independent Power Producers Association, or the PIPA, Ms. Cherry Aviel. From First Gen, Mr. Ernie Pantanco. Ernie. Aboitiz Power, Mr. Antonio Bernad. San Miguel Global Power, Mr. Alan Ortiz. Is Alan here? Wala si Alan. Okay. Representing TransAsia, Attorney Alan Ascalon. Representing Millennium Energy, Miguel Jose Castillo Valencia. Where's Mike? Mike not here. Representing Vivant, Mr. Juan Eugenio Rojas, Johnny. From KEPCO Ilihan, Mr. Hua Yong Wan, Mr. Yang Yun Lim, Mr. Jai Sikriu, and Mr. Erickson Romana. Thank you. Representing AES Power, Mr. Niraj, and Mr. Crisogenus Herrera. Ms. Kim De Leon. From SEM Calaca, Mr. Andy Estrellado. Andy. Is Andy here? Andy, come and join us here. We'll put you in the hot seat. From Team Energy, Mr. Zuguru Chusaki. Morning. Mr. Sani Malaka. Mr. Gregory Romualdez. And Attorney John Vergino. Thank you. From GN Power, Mr. Dan Chalmers. Is Mr. Chalmers here? No, he's not. From CBK, Mr. Ikezawa. Good morning. National Grid is represented by Attorney Racel Baldovino, Mr. Michael Pascual, Mr. Leo Bugarin, and Mr. Armando Pagayon. Representing Manila Electric, Mr. Oscar Reyes is here. He's coming on the way over. And I will mention Ms. Ivan De La Peña and Mr. Al Panlilio. Representing Visayan Electric, Mr. Sebastian Lacson. Where's Basti? Is Basti here? No? Representing the PAPOA, the Private Electric Power Operators Association, Mr. Rani Ocampo. Where's Rani? Is Rani here? He's not here. the Philippine Rural Electric Cooperatives, Mr. Wendell Ballesteros. She's not here. Representing the RESA, the Retail Electricity Suppliers Association, Mr. Raymond Rosios. Federation of Philippine Industries, Mr. Jess Aranza. Is Jess here? No. The Semiconductors and Electronics Industries in the Philippines, CAP, Mr. Dan Lachica. From the Philippine Iron and Steel Institute, Mr. Robert Cola. Not here. From Pilipinas Shell, Mr. Ed Chua. Is there anybody here from Pilipinas Shell? No one. Okay. From the Makati Business Club, Mr. Ramon Del Rosario Jr. Anybody representing the MBC here? No. Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dr. Benjamin Austria. American Chamber of the Philippines, Mr. John Forbes. Not here. European Chamber of the Philippines, Mr. Henry Schumacher. Cebu Chamber, Ms. Maria Teresa Chan. From the Management Association of the Philippines, Mr. Ernie Pantanco. The Foundation for Economic Freedom, it's not Ernie, no, it's you, Eddie Gana. Eddie, Mr. Eddie Gana. And from the Institute of Integrated Electrical Engineers of the Philippines, Engineer Alex Cabugao. Is Alex here? All right, thank you. Oh, Nino is here. Akala ko nag-abroad ka eh. Mr. Nino, one of the ERC. Now, we're all been working on looking for extra megawatts to supplement our reserves, especially during the coming summer, which extends from March, April, May, and up to June. Now, Mr. Secretary, we just want to put on record, because there have been several numbers that have been given to the House Committee and the Senate Committee in consideration of the special resolution that was filed by this representation directing the Committee on Energy to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation to determine government options to alleviate the power shortage in 2015, in conjunction with the House resolution which has already been passed, granting the President the power to establish additional generating capacity. Now first, let's take a look at the balance sheet for our power. What would be the dependable capacity on various months in March, April, May, and June? We won't go week by week. That would take us too much time. Mr. Secretary, what would be our dependable capacities in those months? And to offset that, what would be the peak demand that must be met during the months of March, April, May, and June?
The dependable capacity, Mr. Chair, is about 11,389 megawatts. But on various weeks, this is for the entire summer from March to July. However, what we're looking at really at this point is the available capacity, given the fact that there are some deratings and there are some constraints on the hydro plants during the time of summer. So if we look at the, shall I proceed, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
If we look at the available capacity, we're looking at different figures for each of the week that we projected. But
if you want to give it to us week by week, at least you'll be on record.
Okay. Would you like me to do it on a weekly basis, Mr.
Yes,
Chair?
just give us the available capacity on a weekly basis, Mr. Secretary.
Asan dito? Available capacity. The available capacity on a weekly basis. Mr. Chair, if you'll bear with us, I have so many figures here. I'm trying to find out which one is available. Okay. Wala pa ito, Patrick. Wala pa ang mga committed. Wala pa ang mga additional. The available capacity, Mr. Chair, before the committed and before the additional capacity, it ranges from 8,400, that's the lowest, and the highest that I have here is about 10,012.
10,012 meaning 10012.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
And the lowest being 8,476.
Now, the 8,476, what would be the corresponding demand on that particular week?
The demand is actually 8,290.
So that's not going to give us very much reserve, huh?
Yes, that's the most
What
critical
week would that?
portion.
What week would that be?
That would be week 14.
And week 14 falls on
This falls on, see now, April 4 to 10.
So this is the week where this is the last of the 4 weeks of the Malampaya turnaround.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
And that's where we would have lost already, or inputted is the 750 megawatts that we would have lost from the plants owned and operated by Korea Electric Power Company.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
That's 750 megawatt loss there, right?
It's about 750, 780 megawatts.
Okay. Please continue.
Basically, the lowest, the most critical week will be week 14, and week 15 as well, whereby we have roughly, based on our estimate and based on force outages that we have here, that we've actually imputed. And I have to qualify the force outages. These are averages rather than peaks. In other words, for week 14, for example, the force outage that we put in is about 712 megawatts.
Now the 712, the earlier number you gave us, which is the available capacity of 8476, that's net already of the 712.
This is actually not included yet, Mr. Chair.
So what you're saying is we're going to have a deficit there.
We're going to have a deficit.
Wala nang reserba ito, zero ang reserve.
Wala nang reserba, although we have committed plans coming in and additional capacity.
So we have not adjusted these
We have not
numbers
adjusted yet.
All right.
So for that week 14, for example, in that particular week, we have a committed capacity coming in of roughly around 486 megawatts. I don't have the breakdown of that, Mr. Chair, but it's 486 megawatts. These are included in the NGCP report, whereby they list the number of committed plants that are coming in. Not included in this available capacity as well is the additional capacity. The additional capacity, Mr. Chair, is defined to be those plants or those capacities that really did not exist before June 2015. They were not in the radar until last July, when we asked various sectors to pour in whatever they can pour in terms of additional capacity. So we have the uprating of Limaya, uprating of Bawang, JG Summit coming in.
So you're talking about 100 of Millennium,
100
20 of Bawang, 36 of Limay, then
Butokan.
100 of Avion.
Avion comes in at April
Later.
15. Yeah. later.
So how did you get to 486?
200, actually the additional capacity, the committed capacity, I don't have a breakdown with me right now. These are the plants, the bigger plants that are coming in, including wind, including the coal-fired plants.
Including the wind that has just been
Yes.
commissioned up north?
Yes.
So that's what? The 81 megawatt of Caparispisan
The 150.
and the Burgos
The Burgos.
150.
The north wind, it's a small
18 lang
18.
yata. Oh.
But we also have to derate them because during this time, it actually produces, well, I wouldn't say zero, but minimal.
If you were
output.
to derate it, what would you derate it? Would you say 10% capacity factor?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, please, Mr. Pantanco.
maybe to assist the Secretary, at least as far as the North is concerned, based on the average statistics, on the period of March, we have about 30% of the rated capacity as available.
That's March, but here we're talking about April earning, and I think you go down to
April,
20.
About 21% as far
And then
as...
in May, you go down to 10.
May is 13%.
13.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We've included this, Mr. Chair, in the computation based on the input
Yeah,
that are coming from the wind.
What I'm saying is let's have a net figure, taking into consideration, Mr. Secretary, the capacity factor of the wind, because I don't think we will reach 486, no?
No. Can we have a breakdown? Breakdown na lang ng 486.
So if we do 20 for wind, maybe we'll get to 50 megawatts.
Committed capacity.
Mr. Chair, if we're looking at a total installed of 282, which includes the, if the Secretary will allow me, Mr. Chair, we have 33 megawatts north wind existing, plus the 18, plus the 150 of EDC, and 81 of
Yeah,
Caparispisan.
so the installed
282,
capacity is 282.
Times...
If you take 20% of that's about 50, 56.
30% is 85.
No, I'm not talking of 30,
If
Ernie,
it's
because we're talking of April. In
April,
April,
20%.
you're down to 20,
Yes,
or
sir.
you said 21,
About 21. 20%, that would be about 40
40.
megawatts.
All right. At this point, the chair would like to acknowledge the presence of Senator Honasan. All right. So, if we took the entire 486, Mr. Secretary, then we're looking at an absolute shortage. By absolute meaning, you're below the level of power that is needed. An absolute shortage of about 226 megawatts.
In our computation, Mr. Chair, it's from the regulating reserve. Okay, we are negative by about 135 megawatts.
Okay. Now, you say from the regulating reserve. Now, let's get our numbers straight first. Regulating reserve, the Luzon grid requires about 350 megawatts. Am I correct?
Roughly around, based
Yeah.
on 4% of the demand.
Let's say 4% of peak demand of 9,000. So that's about 360 megawatts. Am I right? More or less, no?
More or less.
Okay. Then, to cover SWAL, 1 unit of SWAL, you need about 600.
647 to be exact.
Now, is SWAL represented here? Yes. Do you actually feed 647 megawatts to the grid, or only 600? I understand a certain amount is for your own use.
Yes, net 47 megawatt out of 647 is our own use.
Okay, so 600 net, Mr. Secretary, no? And then another 600, double that for dispatchable reserve.
Correct. That is correct, Mr. Chair.
All right. I'd like to get some definitions on record, so maybe Chairman Du could respond. What is your definition of yellow alert?
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning, Chair.
Yellow alert means a notice issued by the system operator when the contingency reserve is less than the capacity of the largest synchronized generating unit or power import from a single interconnection, whichever is higher.
So therefore, kung baga sa layman tayo, meron tayong 600, 600, that's 1, 2 plus 350. So our total reserves, which would amount to about 19% of peak demand, should be around 1,550.
That's correct, sir.
Yes, no, maybe?
That's correct, sir.
All right. If that 1,550 drops by 600, wala pang yellow alert yun.
9, sir.
Okay. The moment it drops below the lower 600, that's when you call for a yellow alert.
Yes, sir.
And then the moment it drops below that 600 and starts impinging on the 350 megawatts, that's what you call, that's when you call a red alert.
Red alert.
Is NGCP here? Who's representing NGCP? I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. NGCP.
Good morning, sir.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time looking for your name here.
Leo Bugarin, sir, from NGCP.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
Mr.
Good
Bugarin.
morning, yes, sir.
Tama ho ba yun?
Yes, sir.
We just want you to confirm the numbers that were furnished the committee by Chairman Duco.
Yes, sir. If the reserve, net reserve is lower than the highest synchronized plant, that's mean we issue yellow alert notice, sir. However,
Run that by me again, please.
yes, sir.
If the
Net reserve,
net reserve
yes, sir, is lower, less than the highest generating plant online,
can we just say
Swal.
Less.
For example, Swal, sir, is the highest plant online right now.
Mr. Bugarin,
Yes, sir.
is less than the
Less than the
Capacity
capacity
of the highest of
gener-
the
largest generating plant online.
online,
So the system.
and you must include there the 350 megawatt regulating.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
So between the 350 and the 600, we're talking about 950. The
Yes,
moment
sir.
bumaba below 950,
Yes, sir.
say
That's
949, yellow alert. na
yes, sir.
kayo.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's a yellow alert.
Yes. Good. Now, then let's make the adjustments, Mr. Secretary. We're down to minus 226 megawatts, and we have to cover that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to put in the record that the assumption that we have here in the outlook is we actually assume 647 for Suwal rather than 600. This is actually based on the outlook given by NGCP. Now, whether it is 600 or 647, I'm not sure what NGCP is actually dispatching at the moment and what it's actually giving to its customers. But as far as our outlook is concerned, it's 647. But if it's clarified by the operator that it's only 600, we can adjust accordingly.
Mr. Secretary, we won't quibble about that. If you want to add another 100 megawatts, that's fine by us. So 650 plus 650, that's 1.3 plus 350, that's 1.650 total required reserves. Are we on the same? Yes, Miguel.
You have to compare gross demand to gross capacity. So if we are using a gross demand, which includes all the parasitic loads of all the plants, then we should look at the gross capacity of all plants. So we should use 647 for as long as we're using 8,600 whatever as gross demand.
Thank you. You mean to say, Miguel, even if it's not deliverable or it not being delivered, we still consider it?
Yes, for as long as the demand also includes the parasitic load of the plants.
I see. Okay, and therefore, Mr. Secretary, is the demand included also? The own use?
Mr. Chair, can I ask NGCP to answer
Yes,
this because
please.
they're actually more familiar with the grid situation?
All right.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Actually,
Would you identify yourself?
I'm Mr. Michael Pascual, sir, from NGCP.
Michael
Pascual from System
Pascual, all
Operation.
right.
Yes, sir. Right now, sir, we considered, sir, the 647 megawatt contingency reserve requirements because this is based, sir, on the gross demand and
Okay.
gross generation in the system. And this is also based on our final determination, sir.
All right. Thank you. So, Mr. Secretary, what are the adjustments we now make?
If the demand is based on gross demand rather than net, then we should also consider the gross supply, which is 647.
Yes.
So there is no adjustment needed at this point. But if we want to be conservative, okay, we can actually consider the output as only 600 megawatts at this point.
All right. Now, the adjustments I was asking you is that we're going to be short 226 megawatts. How is that going to be covered in your projections?
In our projection, Mr. Chair, this is a deficit, and the only way that this can be, this is now where we need additional capacity, Mr. Chair. Whether it's coming from additional capacities elsewhere or ILP, this is what we're working on right now. Our first option, though, at this point, okay, is basically one of the options that we've been working on, the industry has been working on, is ILP.
So far, what's the update on the ILP? We understand that there have been certain levels of commitment already. Maybe we should ask who would like to speak. Well, Mr. Secretary, you would be the one on top of those efforts. What are your numbers for ILP now? From Meralco, we have how many megawatts? Yes, Al.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. At least from Meralco customers, we have contracted 197.55 megawatts, and there's another potential 65.90 megawatts, totaling about 263.45, only for captive Meralco customers.
And for the contestable?
The contestable cost for Mr. Chair, just to clarify, the captive customers are signed agreements, while for contestable, they have signed expressions of commitment. They're still finalizing the MOA, but with the signed expression of commitments, the total is 408 megawatts.
Now, you know, there are newspaper reports which were based on the hearings in the House, and we were getting numbers already in the vicinity of 600 megawatts. Where did those numbers come from?
Mr. Chair, if you add the Meralco and the contestable expression of commitment number, that's about 605.55 megawatts.
All right, let me quote. This is from the Business Mirror, dated November 6, a little over a month ago. The DOE data show that committed power supply for the interruptible load program from participants is only 120 megawatts, but the lower chamber data showed that there were already 891 megawatts of committed ILPs with a derated or usable capacity of 625 megawatts. Can you explain that to the committee, Mr. Secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What we consider as committed is basically those who have signed already. Because whenever we have meetings and
Those who have signed
and committed,
with the numbers that they have committed.
they have committed. That is correct.
In other
sir.
words, the numbers might not reflect their capacity. In
Well-
other words, meron silang 150, pero if you ask them for a commitment, sasabihin nila, oh, I will commit 50.
50 lang. Okay.
So it's understated, really, if we were to use the entire capability or capacity of their...
That is correct, Mr. Chair. But there are also those who actually committed their entire capacity, but it's a combination.
Okay.
So when we said that it's 120 way back in November, this was based on actual people who signed up. And during that time, there were actually about 300 megawatts already by RESA. But at that particular time, RESA mentioned to us that these are expressions rather than commitment that they've actually signed. So that changed from November until now. That actually changed. And because so many people ask, what is the total capacity right now? And the number keeps on changing because it all depends on who's actually joining. And we base this on documents we're getting from RESA and Meralco. What we did, Mr. Chair, is put this in a website so that everybody can be updated on where we are. And it's www.corriente.org.ph where we actually put this in. And the numbers that are showing right now, the numbers that we have is 596.7 megawatts. This is what is in the website. Although Mr. Panlilio and Meralco and RESA made mention that it's about 605, there's an additional of about 9 megawatts. It's just a matter of actually submitting all these papers, and then we will update the website.
All right, but the 609 or whatever, hindi pa derated yon or derated na?
These are not derated yet.
Okay.
The way we do it, Mr. Chair, is, and RESA and Meralco can concur or can have some other suggestions on this, is that for Meralco, and this is based on experience, where they actually used ILP, I think 3 times this year, the rating is about 50%. In other words, what's committed by the captive, we just multiply it by 50% because this is what's available when we call them historically. For the RESA, we don't have experience yet on the contestable, but according to RESA, a safe number is 70%. So these are the numbers that we use: 50% for captive, 70% for contestable.
Meralco, why would the captive be less than the contestable? More or less, give us a general explanation for that.
I guess, Mr. Chair, the contestable market have the bigger self-generation capacity. They're the industrial plants, they're the commercial, the bigger commercial plants.
But you know, in Cebu at the Veco area, they have a 70%. That's for all. So, can you speak for Cebu, Cholo?
Sir, well, Basi's not here, but I think in Cebu, the situation is also that the bulk of the committed capacity comes really from the larger.
Yes, but
and you end up with
you
an
do
average.
have an average of about 70.
Yes,
So,
but-
you know,
Yes.
maybe the larger ones would give you 80.
Yes.
The smaller ones would give you 60.
Yes, sir. I don't have the breakdown of the.
Now, Mr. Secretary, this is what puzzles a lot of people. Luzon has about 3,100 megawatts. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chairman Ducot. 3,100 megawatts of generating sets registered and above 1 megawatt in size. So medyo malalaki itong mga gensets na ito. In Cebu, their experience is they've been able to capture about 15% for their ILP, which is about 60 megawatts based on a peak demand of about 400 megawatts. Am I correct, Cholo? All right. So it stands to reason that Luzon should enjoy even a higher percentage of participants, because Luzon really has the big industrial base, the big manufacturing base, the big malls are here, the large buildings are here. So essentially, dapat mas malaki ang participation ninyo. Why does Meralco has a peak demand of what, about 6,000, close to 6,000 megawatts? You should have at least 900. Using 15% as a rule of thumb, you should have at least 900 in your ILP program. Not. Of course, I haven't adjusted that for contestable and captive, no. But more or less, you should have that.
Well, actually, Mr. Chair, we're targeting for a number closer to that. But the bulk of the sign-up should really come from the contestable segment already.
Yes.
From
Malalaki rin
captive,
yung mga
we're already
contestable.
looking at lower than 1 megawatt, so that's a bit difficult already. I think the bigger capacity is really coming from the contestable segment. If you take a look at the universe of self-generation, and we've shared this document across, for our franchise area, it's about 2,800
Malaki.
megawatts of self-generation. 2,100 of that is the 1 megawatt up. Although 700 of that is still with captive, only 1,100 of that is with contestable. If you break down the 1,110 megawatts, 400 of that is commercial, and 704 is industrial. So the bulk, the bigger generation capacity really has to come from the contestable segment.
Yes. And who can make an estimate for the contestable here? Resa. Okay, Raymond.
Your Honor, so far our contracts total is around 2,000. So around, in theory, it's around 80% of that is the standby generation capacity of those contestables. We're now at 400. The ILP figures that we have is at 400. But I think I'm not in a position to say what's the exact contracted already for the retail segment. My estimate is around 1,000 pa lang ang contracted sa contestable segment, sir. So the nearest figure should be around 800 if we were to get all of them to commit.
So 800 plus how much from Meralco?
263 total.
No, I'm not accepting the 263. That means you're not doing your job, sir.
It's a captive.
Huh?
It's a captive, Mr. Chair.
263?
Yes.
263 is your captive?
That's right, sir.
70% your captive, right?
Well, the
70% of 6,000 is your captive base.
No, 6,000 is total captive and
Captive,
and actually contestable.
yes, that's why. But if we take 70% of that, that would constitute your captive market. In other words, your captive
Roughly.
market would be about 4,200 megawatts. And
Which
the rest
includes
would
a
be
big bulk of that, Mr. Chairman, would be our mass market residential segment. But if you look at, again, self-generation inventory, for the 1 megawatt up, it's only about 700 megawatts.
Now, let me see if my numbers, if I recall them, your division is 33, 33, 33, more or less one-third residential, one-third commercial, one-third industrial.
Commercial is at 38%.
38.
Kilowatt-hour sales.
Yeah.
30% for mass market residential and 30.
So it's 68 already for 30% for residential. So maliit lang yung residential ninyo compared to the 70% which is really your commercial and industrial. No? So you've been extra conservative in your numbers, but then you're just telling the committee now that so far is just commitments.
For the Mr. Chair, for the captive, we already have signed up agreements of 197.55 megawatts.
Yeah, that's why. But you're only talking about signed up. You must set targets. What do you feel you're going to be able to
For
obtain?
At least for captive, sir, we're targeting 263 megawatts.
That's still very low.
But again, sir, the bigger chunk will be contestable segment.
No, tinatagal ko nga yung
Yeah.
contestable. If you have 70% coming from, if your consumption of 70% is consumed by the commercial and the industrial, and 70% of that is captive, at least 49% is your farm area.
Mr. Chair, if
Yes.
I may. Yeah, a bulk of these are residential customers, and as
Tinanggal
mentioned-
ko na yung residential.
Well, as mentioned by some of the captive are already 1 megawatt and less. So that's why it's
Okay.
very difficult for them to be signed up in the ILP unless we really go to the very small commercial and industrial as well. So that's just the difficulty that we have with respect to the captive market. There may be many, but the generating sets are very small already.
All right. No, but here I'm only referring to generating sets that are 1 megawatt and larger.
Oh, yes.
All right, and the total inventory of
It's
such
about-
generating sets in the Luzon grid
It's about
adds up. No, it's 3,100. I have the list. I got it from TRC. Huh?
outside Meralco also. Mr.
Yes,
Chair.
the entire Luzon grid.
For-
So in the Meralco franchise area, it'll be 70% of that. So you'll have about
If
2,100.
yes, sir.
All right.
That's based on our numbers.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Based on the 2,100, that's higher than 1 megawatt. 1,100 is with contestable, and actually for going back to captive, sir, the ones we've signed up are already the bigger malls.
Yeah.
We've already signed up, for example, SM at almost 58 megawatts.
All right.
And
You know, the
follows.
SM group, Al, I added up just on corporations that I recognize as part of the SM group. No? They amounted already to 151 megawatts. Now, there's a reason why they would only commit to 50. And correct me if I'm wrong. Everyone here, let's make this open. If you ask for a commitment, they're scared to commit the entire amount. But however, since our ILP, correct me, Mr. Secretary, if you will, our ILP really is just start up your engines for your own use. And kung magkakaroon ng brownout, talagang gagamitin yan. That's exactly what their gen sets are for when there are brownouts. Now, if they don't sign up, they don't get refunded for that portion which they didn't sign up on. I mean, how much did you say SM signed up for?
57.96.
Okay, 50, let's say 60. They have 150. So if we theoretically ask them to turn off your juice from Meralco, they'll have to use the entire 150, diba? They won't get refunded for 150. They'll only get refunded for 60 megawatts. Would I be computing this properly, Miguel?
Yes, however, when you deload, it's by feeder, so chances are not all 150 will be deloaded. It just depends on how many in that feeder are actually registered for ILP.
All right.
And
So they have
actually-
to be registered in order to
get compensated.
And the rest would, you're saying, continue to take juice from the Meralco
Not
power
not
lines.
in the deloaded feeders. Everybody in the deloaded feeder is browned out, but the only ones in the deloaded feeder on the loaded feeders who are asked to turn off for ILP will get compensated. The problem is if you have not enough ILP, instead of deloading one feeder, you might deload 2 or 3.
You might what?
Deload 2 or 3 without the ILP.
Mm-hmm.
With the ILP, you only probably deload 1 or none, while you compensate the others in the other feeder.
So, Al, we can expect that Meralco is going to be able to sign up much more than what you just stated here. What you were talking about were just the committed.
That's right, sir.
We commit to deload,
That's right, sir.
but they can deload more.
We're trying our very best to sign up more, sir.
No.
We're trying our very best to sign up some more. Yes.
Yes. Now, this is where I want to bring up the issue of sign up, because if we use the word committed, then I would be conservative and I would not commit, would I? But if you say best efforts, malamang talagang gagamitin ang backyard generator nila, because they would be subjected to brownouts, knowing that if everybody just committed, say, 20 to 30% of what capacity they would have in their own backyard, then some people are going to suffer brownouts, myself included. Essentially, we're asking Meralco to orchestrate this so that you will know whom to call on what day for what hour, di ba? So this is a work in progress, and I was just wondering if the wisdom of asking them to commit rather than just saying, I've got so much, I'm willing to deload up to this amount on at certain times, although I will not commit because I might have an old genset, I might have a genset that's due for overhaul, etc. But would that be a more realistic way of looking at it?
I guess, Mr. Chair, in all of this, there's a lot of discussion that happens between us and the customer. Initially, obviously, it's voluntary, and we try to convince them, as you stated earlier, Mr. Chair, that if you're going to use your generators anyway, eventually, might as well sign up so you get compensated.
So you get compensated.
So
yeah.
we've been saying that also to all our customers, and at the end of the day, it's what they feel comfortable with committing at that point. But
that's what I want to identify or define. What do you mean by the word committing?
Sir, because in this case, we do define the protocols. When a certain red alert happens, there are protocols that happen, and we would know which ones of our customers we will call. So,
in other words, this is the on-call committing. This is the this is the amount you're willing to immediately switch off.
Yes, sir.
If you get a telephone call.
That's right, sir.
But it is probable that they will switch off even more if you ask them to.
That's possible,
diba?
Sir. That's right.
So maybe we should have two levels: the committed and the probable.
Okay.
And the possible, because it's too low. If you have 2,100 and let's say one half is already contestable, you have 1,000. I mean, I found that 200 megawatts is really ridiculous.
Sir, the 200 is for captive only. That's why I'm saying I think the bigger number comes from contestable, and we're asking Raymond and Ressa to help us out in terms of delivering more capacity.
Estimates about what, 800, 900, no?
Based, sir, on what's contracted, that's the approximation that we have.
This is what do you mean by contracted?
Well, essentially, sir, the relief that
these are the retail electricity suppliers that have contracted already with generating companies.
Yes, sir. And contestable customers.
Yeah. How much more is out there that's not yet contracted that would be available in the contestable market?
Right now, the contract levels, I mean, in the 1 year and a half that we're operating, we are just contracting about 50% of the total universe.
The other 50% siguro they source from Meralco.
And other distribution utilities outside of
the Meralco franchise.
Outside of Meralco, and then the direct connects also.
Is it Meralco's experience that of the 30% that is contestable in your franchise area, you're able to capture back half of that? I would imagine that the customers want to hedge their bets, so they'll give one half to Ressa and the other half to Meralco. In essence, these are contestable customers that still return to Meralco to feed them the juice. Yes.
In our breakdown, Your Honor, majority of the contracted contestable customers are still with the local res. The other half is divided. Local res.
Yes.
The other half is divided among the other licensed res.
You're talking about within the Meralco franchise area?
Yes, Your Honor.
So one half is with res and the other half is outside. But Meralco even has its own res, di ba?
Yeah. Yes, sir. More or less half is contracted with their local res and the other half with the licensed res.
So conservatively, we're talking about what? 800 plus 200 something. About 1,000 for the ILP.
Yes, more or less, sir. Yes.
About 1,000 possible to reach 1.4, 1.5 unofficially. I'm not talking about commitment. Mahirap yung commitment if we don't understand what is meant by commitment. In other words, I'm on call. Yan ang sinasabi nila. I'm on call. If you call me and you tell me to turn off my usage of Meralcos, or I will turn off 40 megawatts. Pero meron pa akong 100 megawatts na gagamitin. In other words, I am not sure, and therefore I don't want to commit that my other gensets can really turn on at the time that you want me to turn them on.
I guess, Mr. Chair, if I go back to the numbers, just on the inventory of self-generation, the 1 megawatt up is at 2,100. Now, at what level they're willing to commit is, I guess, the
Okay.
question.
Would you like to sit down with the staff of the JCPC and
Sure, sir.
maybe we can get some numbers that are more or less clearer so that we can furnish those to our committee members and make them be able to understand.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right? Thank you. Any reaction, Mr. Secretary?
Mr. Chair, just on those who, like example is the SM Group. Okay, I know they have a large generating capacity, but they cite a number of reasons why they cannot commit the entire capacity that they have. And what they've actually committed, and perhaps Meralco can confirm this, are the newer malls with the newer units. Because they, even at this point, because there's not a whole lot of brownout in the Luzon area, they're really not sure if some of their gensets, the old ones, will actually run for a few hours even. That's why they're not committing them. But we continually were working with RESA and Meralco to extract more of these ILPs at this point. We also have, and we've also told RESA and even PESA and SAPI that if there are contestable customers who want to join but who have reservation, we told them kindly include when you sign up or any form of submission. If there's any indication that you want to join, just put in your conditions. Like, for example, there are some who are saying that they need 1 day advance notice. Actually, to some extent, some people actually said, some companies actually said 7 days, and I said, that's not going to work, 7 days. So perhaps 1 day, some 8 hours. So we can lump them all together and manage them accordingly. But we're not closing our doors to just on-call. If there are some conditions, we're willing to take them in so we can manage them.
Right. And I think you're being very, very realistic there, Mr. Secretary, because not all plants are of equal capability, dependability, age, and maintenance level. No? So even under one corporate group, you would have brand new plants, 5-year-old plants, 10-year-old plants, 15-year-old plants, and they will not be able to promise you that when I call you, you turn it off. They might, you turn it on. They say it might not go on. So I don't want to commit. But if we can go on a best efforts basis, I think generally we can expect more than what they have already said that they would commit to. But yeah, you're right. Everybody would have different conditions, and if you put this all together, we can get a better number on what we can expect when they get called upon. Am I talking sense? Okay. Thank you. Now, what would be the new plants then coming on after April 10? Because you said that our worst week could be April 4 to 10, and that coincides with the 750 megawatt loss from KEPCO Ilihan, no? KEPCO is here, no? This was KEPCO. Yes. 750, 780 megawatt loss because the first, block 1 is derated to 420 and block 2 is completely out. So that's 600 plus 180, that's 780. That's the based on your numbers, Mr. Secretary. Now, after April 10, what adjustments do you make? What do the numbers look like? Available capacity,
The
outage.
Mr. Chair, the only plant that is coming in after April 10 is really just, at this point, it's Avion at 100 megawatts. Okay, that's because they also need gas. Malampaya shut down. They'll have to wait for Malampaya shutdown to complete before they can actually come in. There's another plant from DMCI, but we counted them in on April 1 already. So if we're talking about April 10, we've counted them on April 1 already. That's 150 megawatts. And the other 150, we put them in July 1 already.
Which is the other 150? That's the second Kalaka?
That's the second Kalaka.
Okay.
Because that's a total of 300. So the only thing that's coming in really is 100 megawatts from Avion, and which will be coming in April 15, and 150 on July 1 by Kalaka, the MCI.
Avion, I just, out of curiosity, where's Ernie? Ernie, can Avion operate also on condensates?
Yes, sir, we can.
All right, so they can actually come on stream earlier if they're ready, because the entire 1,500 first gas plants have backup fuel, which is in this particular case it's condensate, no?
Yes, sir, condensate or diesel.
And the Avion plant is next to the Santa
Yes.
Rita San Lorenzo plants.
That's right, sir.
So therefore,
but
you can connect the storage tanks to Avion.
I think that's part of the work in progress. But however, Mr. Chair, I think maybe just to add to what we do confirm the April 15 beginning, the start of commissioning, actually because we've had some delays in the construction. It's not because we don't have the liquid fuel. It's really because there were some delays in the construction that we're currently addressing, additional pilings that's required and so forth. So that's why we will begin commissioning on April 15. Now, if the gas is available, we can do it on gas, but we do have liquid fuel if that is needed.
Now, when you say commissioning, just for the information of our members, you're on and off. You're really testing.
Yes, sir.
Now, when will you go? When do you expect to go into full operation?
Normally, what happens, Mr. Chair, is we have a 30-day reliability run where we go on and off and so forth. And then after 30 days, then we can officially commit, or we go on commercial operation, that the plant is reliable. But
So that would be May 15, Mr. Secretary. Di ba?
That is correct, Mr. Chair. Actually, the commitment of First Gas for the Avion is I did ask them, can you run on liquid? And 2 months back, their commitment was, we will attempt to, but we're looking at April 15 for the commissioning. I mean, we're not discounting the fact that they might be able to run, but in terms of counting them in my outlook, okay, I'm putting them on April 15.
Understood. All right. Now, when is your next worst week after April 4 to 10?
The adjacent, Mr. Chair, the adjacent week after that, which is week 15. And week 15 is April 10 to 17. And the deficit is more or less the same, almost the same.
So those 2 weeks are the most
Those 2
critical.
weeks.
All right. Now, theoretical. If KEPCO decides to run, and the wherewithal is found to run the Block 2, no, Mr. Kion?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And we can run that on pure diesel. That would be an additional 500 megawatts available during that period. I'm not saying it should be permanently inputted, because really in your numbers, by April 15, everybody comes back online, no? At the full 1,200 rated capacity. No? But what is critical are those 2 weeks from April 4 to April 15, almost 2 weeks. If that is brought back I mean, if that is allowed to continue operating, in other words, they use the downtime at some later date, or that means we're not going to have this negative 226 megawatt.
That is correct, Mr. Chair. We will be on yellow alert though, but we will not be on red alert.
If we were on yellow alert, by how many megawatts would we be short?
Roughly, if they inject an extra 500 megawatts, we're looking at about 250 to 300 contingency.
Wait
Yes,
a
sir.
minute, I'm not getting that because here are the numbers you gave us. 8,476 available capacity. I'm talking about the week 4 to 10, no, April 4 to 10. Peak demand, 8,290. So you're looking at a little surplus, not even enough for your regulating reserve of about 186 megawatts. Are we still on the same page? Then you project an outage of 712 megawatts.
Yes.
So we're minus, what, 486 na doon, no? Ganun ba yun?
I'm trying to make my own calculation, Mr. Chair. Where I'm coming from, Mr. Chair, is I'm starting with the available capacity of 8,476.
Yes.
And then you have 486 of additional committed capacity.
Wag mo muna i-add yan because I'm questioning the capacity factor for wind. And I think you added back the entire 280 megawatts of wind.
We did not actually,
you
Mr.
did not?
Chair. In fact, to be exact on the committed capacity for week 14, we counted Bagi as 11 megawatts, Burgos Wind Phase 1 as 52 megawatts. That's
52?
52 megawatts. I think
Masyado malaki yan para sa Burgos.
this is submission of the various wind companies now. But we can adjust this accordingly if they have any changes in their estimates. Caparis Pisan at 49, and then Burgos, the second phase, at 38 megawatts.
Yeah. Ernie, is that realistic? For wind lang.
Actually, Mr. Chair, you know, the wind can be variable. No? I think it's what we wanted to make sure that we're committed. However, the average has shown that, at least for the northern section, even on our historical data on Burgos, that really during April, May, and June, medyo pababa ng generation. And I think those were the figures that we conveyed to the Secretary.
You know, Burgos has 150 megawatt.
Yes, sir.
And if I recall, it's 33% capacity factor for March, more or less historical.
That's right.
20% for April and 10% for May. In other words, it's really on a
It's the low.
downslide.
Yes, sir.
If we were to use 20%, you'll only be giving us 30 megawatts in April
Yes, sir.
and 15 megawatts in May.
Yes, sir.
So let's just make that adjustment in order to be conservative, Mr. Secretary.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'd rather take the conservative figures. So if the wind companies can give me conservative figures, that's what I will inject here. But granting that this is the figures, Mr. Chair, if I can just start with this, the 486, and we can make some adjustment later on, we're really looking at minus 135 of deficit for week 14, subject to the adjustments that we just mentioned earlier.
So this is 135 below zero.
That's below regulating reserve.
So sama ng samang 350. So this 135, that 350 goes down to almost 200.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Senator Honasan would like to propound questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Petilla, ang dami kasing resource persons dito. So, I have difficulty determining whom I should ask and what I should ask. So I will ask you. Your responses, the responses to the questions propounded by the chair, are these reflected in the reports that I assume are submitted to your office because you are the authority? Is that a fair statement?
That is correct, Mr. Chair. In fact, there is no way for us to actually find out the actual output of each one, so we defer to the submission of the reports from the various industry players.
Okay, because I'm looking at how we are wired, how we are structured to respond to this coming problem. Our objective is energy sufficiency. Is that a fair statement?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
That is our short, medium, and long-term objective.
For the purpose of 2015, Mr. Chair, we're looking at the short term.
Beyond 15.
Beyond 15,
We are still looking at being able to respond.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And the defining character of this would be steady supply and reasonable prices. At least that's what I have learned so far. Okay. Is this reflected? Well, let me phrase it this way. No recrimination ito, no? When you assumed as Secretary of Energy, did we have an energy development plan?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have.
Was it a long-term energy development plan?
It is long-term, and it is also based on forecasted demand and submissions of various industry players.
Okay, so let's go back to the reporting system. So everybody reports to you, private sector, public sector, and then you report to the energy committees of both houses, especially the Power Co.
That is correct, Mr. We submit a copy of the Philippine Energy Plan.
Because you have to understand, Secretary, no? That your committee, even with due diligence, has no way of validating what you submit to it. Is that correct? We do not have the mechanism to check and cross-check except from independent sources.
To some extent, the technical side, Mr. Chair, we really depend on the reports being given to us.
Okay. These are all motherhood, no? But I'm trying to understand this because I got excited by the statement of the chair that the other committee members must be made aware. They must develop an appreciation for this particular issue. So, my question is, when you stepped in as Secretary of Energy, and we had an energy development plan, do we have that now?
We do have that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, my question is, how did it come to this? If you were submitting reports and you submit reports to us, I suppose if we were on the same page to begin with. By the way, I'm not blaming you, no? Baka we did not read your reports or we did not understand your reports. But the fact is, this reporting system is mandated by law. So, from where you sit, looking back, before we are able to respond, because ang worry ko dito, Secretary, is we're back into a reactive mode. And if we have an energy development plan where the other members can cross-check the figures, the quantitative data that you are giving us, including the qualitative dimensions of this problem, then I guess we should be moving forward. Yes. So, how did it come to this? From your analysis,
yes.
We had a plan, and we were all on the same page. From where you sit now, paano ba nangyari ito? Now, let me add to that because I'll ask Chairman Ducot. Itong ILP, and you can validate this later, Chairman Ducot, no? Was proposed by the ERC as early as 2010 for the problem in Mindanao and the Visayas. But we will go to that later. let me go back to my question. Paano ba nangyari ito?
That's a very good question, Mr. Chair. We do have an energy plan, okay? And then, in fact, we had to make so many changes on the forecast because in the past, ang forecast was just a straight line. And we all do know, we know that the demand is actually jagged edge in terms of supply and demand, even the supply. Where we are is, ang question dito, are we reacting, okay, to the problem? Yes, we are. I do admit that. But we're reacting at a time where we can do something about it. We're not reacting when it happens already. This is the reason why I brought this last July to the attention of the industry, because we foresaw the problem in 2015 as early as July of this year. Kung hindi namin ginawa ng paraan, aabutan na lang tayo ng 2015 and then we'll have brownouts and sasabihin what happened. So now we're reacting because there is a time to actually rectify this problem. And that's why we're all here. Now, how does this happen? If when I mentioned to Mr. Chair the capacities, I actually broke it down to two, committed and additional. Committed capacities are, ito yung mga meron ng financial closing, they're constructing, they're all there, they're included in our projection. So nandun sila, yung committed capacities na yan. The problem that we have is...
By the way, let me interrupt. I'm not smiling at you, no? When you said committed, in a previous lifetime, may categories din kami yung committed at saka yung kumita. Okay, I just wanted to make that distinction. I'm serious, no? Because I noticed, when we talk to public or private sector, all of us, when it involves public interest, something as strategic as energy, which will impact on households, lives, productivity, retrenchment, closing of industries, we're waving the Philippine flag. And I have this feeling that our counterparts are just waving their income statements and balance sheets. I just want to make sure that we put that in perspective so that we can address this properly. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The committed projects are all there. In fact, even right now, we have committed projects, very specific dates and capacities when they're coming in. Our problem was starting this year, 2014, there were many factors that led to this deficit in 2015. I had to give myself a deadline because if I wait for it until 2015, there's nothing much I can do about it. If I warn the public too early, sasabihin, you're causing distress to the industry. So, I had to choose a particular date and I had to make sure that we could do something about it, ito mga problema. First problem that we had, Mr. Chair, was a company which was due to go online this year. Yung nakita namin last February, kahit turbina wala pa. So we asked them, where's the turbine? March na daw because we have a problem with LGU. We worked with the LGU, we were able to get permits. In other words, lahat ng problema nila sa permitting, kinuha muna namin, and then wala pa rin turbina. And then sabi nila, April. April came, wala pa rin, May, June, and I said, July, I can no longer count on you. So we had to take them out. That's 200 megawatts already, at the very least. And then we also noticed that the forced outages for 2014 was actually very, very high compared to the previous years. Ang forced outage, Mr. Chair, ito yung mga conking out, okay, of engines. And usually, we have the highest conking out of engines on summertime because just 1 degree increase in temperature, mas madaling mag-breakdown ang mga machines. It's also the time when all the machines are running 101% and the chances of breaking down is very high. But notably in 2014, actually on summer of 2014, as early as March and April, we were already managing the supply and demand because it was actually very, very tight. And this was just 2014. And if we look at this, if we compare this to 2013 and 2012, talagang mas malaki ang outage. So we had to factor it in, that we have more forced outage in the forecast. Also, there was one plant that went down, which is Malaya. This is a 350 megawatt plant. And this is a more than 40-year-old plant. This is actually the most inefficient plant that we have in this country right now. Because bago mo magamit yan, 16 hours muna ang painit yan. And if you only need it for 2 hours, you can turn it off if you need it the following day. So this is actually for privatization. There are no takers. Dalawang beses na binid out ito. But we still keep on running them. It conked out, and now it's being, probably Pisam can give info on this later on where it is. But we don't know at this point whether it will actually run on summer of 2015. Now, I had to flag it again because as early as July, we saw this already. And then also the demand, Mr. Chair. Demand is based on propensity of consumers to use electricity. It is not exact science. In other words, we have had so many deviations in demand forecasting. In other words, we can say it's going to be 9,000 megawatts in 2015. That's our peak demand. But it can be 9,003. It can also be 8,900. So all things considered, nakita namin that we more or less have a problem in 2015. But this was only detected because of delays, because of force outages that happened this 2014 of summer. But this is a problem confined to the summer of 2015. Because based on the outlook, we have many plants coming in, and the industry player can probably tell you that because there are plants coming in after 2015 summer.
Oh, Secretary, I understand your situation. No? But again, I go back to the issue of, that's why I try to break it down. No? Is this energy development plan a short, medium, or long term? Why? This issue came up and we got, in the interpellations, in the discussions, we got NEDA and the DBM to admit that that is the story of our lives. We seem to be perpetually into medium-term development planning, and the energy sector is no exception. So I'm just raising this issue because, I'll give you an example, and you can validate it. I've been hearing that we have the highest or second highest power rate in Asia or in the world. Is this correct?
I don't know about the world, but in Asia, Mr. Chair, we're one of the highest.
Okay. I've been hearing this for the last 16 years. I've been in the Senate for 16 years. No? And the reaction, because then it seemed so remote from us, is so, di ba? Parang kibit balikat na lang. No? My point really is, it's about time we seriously address this. Mr. Chair has been on top of this, no, for a long time. Na kaming mga committee members, naaawa na rin kami sa kanya because it took him almost 2 years to find out where the revenues from Malampaya went. Can you imagine that? No. So, Secretary, I'm just putting this on your table because it's about time. I got a little concerned when I heard the same questions being asked by the chair no? in every committee hearing that I managed to attend. So I started wondering if this information was reflected in reports. That should be, you are the receptacle for these reports.
Mr. Chair, there are reports, there are figures that are long-term in nature.
Okay.
It takes about 4 to 5 years to build a plant. In fact, the plants that are actually delayed at this point came into the picture before I came in. Nandiyan na sila, committed na sila before I came in. It's just that they're not happening on time. For example, we have another plant, Calaca, the MCI. It was supposed to go online December 31. That's been delayed. Okay, we're actually asking them to explain the cause of the delay. Okay, and we're also trying to look at their contractual obligations with their customers. Ano ba ang contractual obligation ng customers nila? Because these plants have been built, they had not been contracted by the government, but they've been contracted by private endeavors, probably Meralco as well. So how they crafted their contracts, okay, we're also trying to review at this point. But these delays come in every now and then. I haven't seen a plant, or I seldom see a plant that's actually delayed. So we put a little bit of the allowance, a month or 2 months. But the others are really, either they're not happening at all, or the delay is way beyond our computation. And this is what is not reflected in the energy plan, because the energy plan is annual. This problem that we have right now came into the picture just within this year.
Secretary, with your indulgence, no? Thank you for those answers. This proposal to grant emergency powers to the President, I was looking at it from another perspective. It will cut through the debate, the bureaucratic, the nuances of the bureaucratic discussions that happen. No? Ang naisip ko naman, maawa naman tayo sa presidente natin. No? Unless the infrastructure for making these decisions, setting enforceable timetables are in place, it might not make generate the required impact. No? So, aside from what should complement this effort to grant the President emergency powers, ano pa ba ang possible options and solutions? So, let's bring ourselves back muna to baseline, starting point before we start moving forward. What other options are we thinking about? Wala munang kwan, wala munang yung mahirap i-validate na quantitative data, which we will get down to once you start sharing or we find those reports, no? Where we can match your energy development plan with the reports that are submitted to the PowerCom, coordination between your office, private, public sector, and Congress, so that we can have a standardized measuring device, parang a performance audit for this long-term energy development policy. Let's go back to my question. Ano pa ba ang naisip natin na ibang solusyon with this coming problem?
We're actually not resting at this point, Mr. Chair, in looking for solutions. Okay. First of all, ang solution talaga na tinitingnan natin dito is how can we actually come up with solutions na hindi na masyadong involve ang gobyerno. In other words, walang kontrata sa gobyerno. Because you have to understand, Mr. Chair, that 3 months ago, power plants could have been built, okay, but they also require government guarantee. In other words, some of the players are actually here. Meron silang pwedeng i-rehab ng mga planta, pero kung gagamitin lang ito ng one summer, parang it's not really feasible for them, no? So sinasabi namin, can you build a plant without any government guarantee? And even up to this very point, Mr. Chair, meron pa rin nagtatanong. We're willing to come up with a plant. I just got a call from one proponent. Sabi nila, LPG. Okay, sabi ko, okay, but I cannot give you a contract. Sabi nila, we'll go to Meralco. So they're waiting for an introduction to Meralco, whether that's also an agreeable. It's not automatic kasi kung mahal din, hindi rin kukunin ni Meralco. These are all commercial. In other words, wala mo ng gobyerno, we're asking the private sector, what can we extract without actually asking for government guarantees?
Secretary, let me interrupt to this point. No? That's why I keep on harping on this long-term development plan, no? Energy development. Why? Because it gives those who want to invest in the power industry in our country a sense of predictability. No unpleasant surprises. And it goes beyond the watch of the present administration. It's an expression of commitment. Committed tayo sa planong ito. It's a long-term plan. The variables are clearly defined. And we have the ability, by law and by oversight, to enforce this in the long term. Yun ang hinihingi nila sa atin. In fact, yun ang disincentive. Walang gustong tumaya sa atin in the long term because every single, the cycle, the extent of our vision is 3 to 6 years. Every election period. Because every time a new dispensation takes over, new governor, new senator, new mayor, iba na naman yung plano. Diba? Ganun na nangyayari. No sense of long-term predictability, sustainability. Kaya, there was an observation na perpetually tayo into medium term, no? From Philippines 2000, isang bansa, isang diwa, strong republic. Now, of course, we subscribe to Daang Matuwid, no? It's a long-term policy and development highway. So I'm raising this issue para we can adopt the same perspective and we can help each other. But first requirement is you share naman accurate, timely, and complete information that will allow us to debate on and make rational, intelligent, long-term policy decisions. That's hindi ako nagmamarunong o nagmamagaling dito, Secretary. You're the man. Okay, please.
Mr. Chair, okay. Actually, sa Philippine Energy Plan natin, okay, if we want to entice investor at this point for power plants, okay, one major component, and you can also ask the industry players because they're also here, no? Ang number one talaga na nakikita nila dito is that what is the demand? Because this is very simple. If there is demand in the future, I'm not talking about the demand tomorrow, talking about the demand in the future. That's why we're trying to complement each other kung ano ang demand forecasting ng NGCP, demand forecasting ng industry, at demand forecasting ng DOE. Because if we see that there is demand, all we have to do is, what is the supply? If there is demand in the future, the next thing to do is, paano natin i-entice ang private sector to build the power plants because it's actually there's a demand. Now, that portion is a commercial nature. Kasi they actually, Meralco, for example, and the generator will have to talk together and see ano ba ang kailangan mo and we'll build a plant. Kami naman, ang ginagawa namin dito sa DOE ngayon is that because we're also trying to see if there is demand, bakit hindi nagtatayo? Ano bang nangyayari dito? We're trying to sort that out right now, and we're actually having policies right now to address that. Because what we're doing right now, Mr. Chair, is not really for this administration now. We're looking at the supply and demand for 2020, 2019. Ito na ang mga pinag-uusapan namin ngayon.
Secretary, again, let me interrupt. No? Secretary, I don't mean this in the negative way. Are you a lawyer?
I'm not, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Hindi rin ako lawyer, obviously. No? Alam mo naman kung saan ako nanggaling. No? I have learned over time that as a constitutional principle, ang number one talaga is right to life. That is what this issue means to where we sit. Right to life. Pag nag-retrench, nag-shutdown yung planta, families will go hungry. Itong sinasabi mo, that comes maybe a close second or third, yung balancing of interest. The profit motive, alam mo na. But bottom line dito is right to life. That should be the common perspective. You're allowed naman by law to, if you're private sector, to make your profits, no? But not at the expense of life and not at the expense of balancing of interest in our market-driven economy. That's just something I wanted to share with you. Para again, we can incorporate this. But I really appreciate your candid answers, and I'm glad that you're looking at this in the long term. No? Now let me shift to Chairman Ducot. Chairman Ducot, I just want a validation that as early as 2010, ERC had already agreed or proposed to implement ILP in Visayas and Mindanao.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. It was BECO which filed the petition for the approval of its interruptible load program in Visayas, Mr. Chair. And after the conduct of several public consultations on the matter, ERC promulgated ERC Resolution Number 8, Series of 2010, amended by ERC Resolution Number 8, Series of 2013, rules to govern the interruptible load program distribution utilities, Your Honor.
Okay. Did it include the proposal to grant emergency powers to the President?
It's not, sir.
So, are there any differences in the objective conditions that warranted this proposal in 2010? Bakit wala noon? Bakit naisip natin yun? This is a simple question. What is the difference between the 2010 ILP and the 2015 ILP proposal?
Sir, in 2010, it was applied in Visayas. It's only, it's not as big as what is conceived now as ILP. This is intended for Luzon now, sir. At that time, we don't have yet market in a retail market in Visayas, sir.
Okay.
And
Please go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. That's it, sir.
Okay, so Secretary Ikot, will you please give, well, not only the chair of the committee, but the other members of the committee the benefit of these additional inputs para we can urgently study this and get involved, because the chair had to remind me that I was a member pala of the Energy Committee. Okay, but thank you, Chairman Ducot and Secretary Petilla, for your very candid answers, and ladies and gentlemen, for your patience. Mr. Chairman, salamat po.
Thank you, Senator Honasan. I just want to remind all of you that Senator Honasan used to be chairman of the Energy Committee in the Senate and also chair of JCPC, so he knows what he's talking about. But to follow up first on the topic that he raised, the predictability, Chairman Ducot, the ERC came up with a secondary cap, which now limits the amount of return that peaking plants, especially the peaking plants, because we do need peaking plants. Now, your secondary cap, just in layman's sense terms, is 625 per kilowatt hour, but that really reflects what, 880, no?
Sir, please allow Attorney Juan to answer the
It's
question.
very complicated. I'm willing to explain this to the members of the committee. If we went into that now, it would take us a couple of hours. You did give me a briefing already, but that level, whatever you want to call it, 625 or 880, how does that correspond to the 14 pesos per kilowatt hour, more or less, that we're willing to refund, or willing to pay or to authorize the participants in the Interruptible Load Program? It seems to me that there's a disconnect there somewhere where we're saying, come join the ILP, I'll guarantee you 14 pesos. In the meantime, if you put up your peaker, you'll only get 625 or 880 or whatever other computation you might have. Paano po yan?
Okay. Please allow Commissioner Asiri to answer the question, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The 6 pesos secondary cap actually comes into the picture only when a certain threshold is breached. So it doesn't automatically become 6 pesos, sir. There actually is a threshold that is cumulative in nature, wherein the commercial or the merchant plants can actually still bid or offer even as high as 30 pesos, even as high as 32 pesos, as long as in the monitoring of a 3-day period, 72 hours, a particular threshold is not breached. In this case, for the first secondary cap of 6245, it was actually 8 pesos, 8,186.
That's equivalent to 8 pesos and 10 centavos, di ba?
Yes,
because that's
sir.
per megawatt hour yan.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But within that period, within the 3-day period, for the 24 trading intervals, they can still actually bid in that previous computation about 27 pesos, 30 pesos for
Wait a minute.
certain intervals.
Let's say we were on yellow alert in the summer, and all the ILP participants are now selling at or charging 14 pesos per kilowatt hour. How do you reconcile that with your 625, 880 per kilowatt hour?
For the regular interruptible load program, sir, it's not actually in the market. Once they have an expression of commitment or they are called upon by Meralco or the distribution utility that is actually implementing the ILP, it's contractual already, and those are it's actually 15 pesos if I'm not mistaken, or thereabouts.
15, okay.
Yes. That's already set in the previous ILP rules.
Yes,
with
but
certain
I'm
caps.
saying is that we're running into a shortage. You will agree. We have need for different types of power plants. You need baseload, mid-merit, peakers. We're trying to attract peaking plants investors also. How do we attract peaking plant investors with these type of restrictions on pricing? How will they now project what they will be able to sell and for what? When every 3 days there might be a the
cap.
ERC coming in and saying, "Oops, wait a minute, you can't sell above this for the next 2 or 3 days."
Sorry for me, the computation for the threshold was actually computed based on the utilization factor of peaking plants. It ranged from 8% to a high of 12%, which is a more or less the normal capacity utilization factor for peaking plants. That was how it was computed.
All right. There was it was not a study, but there was a letter from a Castalia, an associate, or Castalia Consulting, which made sense. Would you like to explain to the committee what Castalia meant when he wrote he put his observations on paper? I think he indicated that the restrictions of the secondary cap would drive away peakers, or would not make investors in peaking plants, would not make it attractive for investors in peaking plants to actually set up peakers. No? Are you familiar with that letter?
Yes, sir. But I'm not sure I'm in a position to make a discussion on it. But yes, there was that letter. But I think it has to be taken in the context of the responsibility also, or the authority of the commission to, I think I will have to borrow the secretary's words, to balance the interests of the consumers and the investors. When
Okay, so you're saying you can regulate in the interest of the consumers. So therefore, you're setting energy economic policy, and it might be contrary to the intent of Congress when it passed the EPIRA. We do know, not, okay, tataas yan, but we do know that we do have to use the market to attract investors. We've thrown away the take or pay provisions, government guarantee. Hindi, pumasok kayo, and the market will determine what you will be able to charge, especially if you're already in the area of the contestable. Bahala na kayo.
Actually, the commission has been re-evaluating and has evaluated the imposition of the secondary cap as a mitigating measure. And I believe we'll be coming out with a new resolution on that. It actually underwent through several public consultations with the stakeholders, and their inputs were taken in coming out with.
Well, the stakeholders that we would be concerned about are those people who we want to put money into the peaking plants also.
Yes,
no?
sir. Yes,
because we do need peaking plants. Otherwise, our rates really will be higher than what they would be without people willing to take a gamble that they will only be able to sell 8 to 12% of their total capacity a year, and they'll have to make their money back. For example, Mr. Secretary, one of the pronouncements of the President, where I kept quiet, and anyway, we said, "Oh, we welcome merchant plants." Now, what is a merchant plant, Mr. Secretary?
Merchant plant, Mr. Chair, is basically a plant without any contract. It's not attached to any contract, and it sells its capacity to the market.
Now, therefore, I think the President must have been referring to Avion.
I think he was referring to not only Avion but San Gabriel, Pagbilao, and there's a San Miguel plant that's also coming in. These are all merchant plants.
Pagbilao, meaning the Pagbilao where...
The expansion, Mr.
Yes.
Chair.
But they are about to sign up with part of their capacity with Meralco. So you're willing to go into the contestable. All right. But the thing is, I understand, like Avion is going to lose money with the secondary cap. Or they're going to have an incredibly long time before they can recover because they did not, their projections were thrown haywire by the secondary cap. And I was wondering whether the ERC is aware of this. That's why you'll have to sit down. When you say you talk to the stakeholders, which stakeholders are these? The picking plant and the PIPA? Have they sat down with the PIPA already to discuss the secondary market? Miguel? Or who would talk on behalf of PIPA?
Yeah. In their public consultation.
Can you
Your
bring
Honor,
the mic closer to you, Cherry?
we participated in their public consultation regarding the
Yes.
secondary price cap. But as individual generators, because PIPA has a pending case in the RTC.
Guess what?
Has a pending case in the regional trial court.
Meaning they can't talk to you? What do you mean they have a pending case? Although the PIPA has questioned the ERC.
Yes, for
All
the
right.
implementation of the secondary
Yes,
price
but here
cap.
we're discussing policy. We're
Yes,
also
sir.
discussing what was the intent of Congress when we decided that it's the market that would determine the rates. We now have a very sustainable electricity power industry simply because the government does not have to fund it anymore. We're not out of pocket anymore. Unlike pre-EPIRA, where we had to guarantee take-or-pay contracts for 25 years, where we had to continue pumping money into Napocor and subsidizing it. So I believe that because of EPIRA, the Philippines has become the model for sustainability in the power industry. Malaysia is having problems trying to offload their $10 billion a year subsidy. Indonesia has a $20 billion a year subsidy that they're also trying to offload. And I admire President Jokowi, the new president, when he bit the bullet and he actually, I think, started implementing it. He's got political capital because he just won, but the people there are going to be mad at him because tatanggalin na yung subsidy sa diesel at saka sa gasoline at saka sa power. Thailand is also trying to offload its $10 billion a year subsidy for power because they've been subsidizing. They've been subsidizing industry, they've been subsidizing the farmers, etc. And now they found out that they cannot sustain that type of, that level of subsidy. So now that we have ours, the only recourse we have is to attract people because we're telling them, hey, the market will determine, so your pricing signals will come when you watch the WESM market and you'll be able to tell whether it's a time to come in and start planning and building new plants. So, we'll have to sit down with I was even going to call for a JCPC hearing just for ERC alone because we're puzzled that if we mean this, ERC seems to take it upon themselves and you have independence, so we grant you that. We don't intervene with whatever decisions you make, but sometimes when we feel you're going off in another direction, we want to understand what are you doing. The powers that you were given have to be kept within the market rules that were mandated by the EPIRA. You mean well, but I mean, for example, why is it at 625? Why can't it be at 10 or 12 or 15 pesos so that we would attract more players in building peaking plants? Otherwise, we might be committing suicide. You're happy that you're able to restrict rates, but now we're going to be running into a shortage of peaking plants 5, 7, 8 years from now. Yes, I know.
Yes, sir. We'll sit down with you, sir, to discuss.
Yeah, PIPA has filed that case. What does PIPA feel the rate should be? That's 625. Let's talk like laymen. Otherwise, the members of the committee that start reading a transcript won't be able to understand. What should that 625 be, or what should that 880 be, in order to make it attractive for new players to come in?
Well, it should be a number that's above the marginal cost of the thermal plants so that they are not out of cash.
Long run?
Even short run.
Even short run?
Even short run, as long as they're not, because the price cap resets after a while, so the market goes back to normal. But they shouldn't be losing cash during the time that the price cap is there. Because if they lose cash, they might not have cash to purchase fuel. If they can't purchase fuel, then automatically they shut down their plant.
That's right. Yanni, you have peakers, no? You have bawang.
Yes,
no?
po.
Okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
How much does it cost you to say run bawang? What's your marginal cost?
Well, sir, there's been a reduction of fuel prices, but
now before because
yes,
this is a new phenomenon, and we're very, very happy to that development because it brought down all of our fuel costs. But before, let's say 2 months ago,
roughly about 12, sir.
12 pesos.
Yes, 12 or more. Yeah.
Relate that to the secondary cap.
Actually, sir, we were kind of lucky when the secondary price cap was imposed, because we've already contracted with Meralco for a short term.
Okay.
In short, we were not. We really didn't feel the pinch, and we could not quantify as far as the effect is in numbers, as far as the numbers are concerned, because as mentioned, the capacity factor of the peakers is actually all over the place. For our first 2 years, we were running only at less than 6%, and then when the November-December shortage came, we ran at 12%. So actually, if we base it on
in
the
normal
capacity,
times, because November-December of last year,
yes, sir,
that's an abnormal situation, so we shouldn't take that as a model. But in normal times,
considering it as an outlier, sir, it would be safe to assume that peakers like us would only run 6% of the whole year, Your Honor.
Aina, would you validate that?
Yes, sir. And that's why the initial secondary cap was pegged at the 6% utilization factor. But we have reviewed...
Is for new or for existing? Because
existing, sir.
The new would need a higher price.
Will look, not necessarily, sir, because they would necessarily also have their own short run and long run marginal costs, but it doesn't fall too far from where the existing ones are. We put a band.
Miguel?
We put a bandwidth, sir. It's
depends on the type of peaking plant, the fixed cost, how long it would take to recover, or what capacity factor to take to recover. So, if you have a second-hand engine, then it would be shorter because the capital cost is less. But if you have a brand new unit, you'd probably need something more like 15 or 20%.
15%?
15 or 20%.
Yeah, you have the 440 megawatt San Gabriel. What do you?
Well, sir,
What would be your projected break-even capacity factor for San Gabriel?
if you're working on the existing prices of natural gas, we should be in the 9. That's mid-merit, assuming mid-merit, Mr. Chair. That's about 9 to 10 pesos per kilowatt hour. Maybe just to provide some perspective, Mr. Chair, and I hope ERC takes this or notes the. If we look at the ILP, the 14 pesos, the 14 pesos is really just a reimbursement of the peaking plant fuel cost plus a little bit of O&M. There is no provision for capital recovery because the ILP assumes that you have an existing plant that you already invested in, so it's sunk cost. If you look at the plants like Bawang, Limay, and so forth that were purchased from government or are leased from government, I think you're looking at anywhere between 12 to 15 pesos per kilowatt hour because there is a certain capital component fee, whether it's payments to PISAM or whatever. However, I think based on the unofficial discussions, if you were to build a brand new diesel plant, you'll have to look at the range of about 20, 21 pesos because that includes your recovery of your capital cost with a very limited capacity utilization.
Mahal lang 2021, no? It sounds a bit high to me, Ernie.
That assumes the very low short term. You only are utilized 1 or 2
You
hours.
probably want to recover
per
your
peak.
capital in 2 years if you're starting.
No, well, it depends on the capacity factor, Mr. Chair. But I guess maybe just a comment, Mr. Chair. We already have the primary cap, and the primary cap is 32, no? And that one has been up in the air, and I think that one should be brought down to what would be an incentive for a new peaking plant to come in.
What? What do
right
you
now it's
suggest?
32. Could be 20, 21.
Would ERC balance that off? I say bring down the primary to 21 and get rid of the secondary cap, or at least keep the. If you want to keep the primary cap at 32, is 32 or 31? 32, no?
32, sir.
32. Raise the secondary cap
Sir,
enough so that we attract.
The primary cap, sir, is actually not just ERC set. It's not just ERC that sets it. It's actually a tripartite committee, the DOE, the ERC, and the Philippine Electricity Market Corporation.
You must remember when we conducted an inquiry into the price spikes last year, and then suddenly the ERC came up with the first that you drop the primary cap. No, first the Supreme Court backed you up. You drop the primary cap, then later on you instituted or installed, I don't know what the term for it is, a secondary cap. And my comment was, that's good politics, but that's bad economics. In other words, you please the consumer by setting that cap, but at the same time, it may be bad economics because you're turning away investors. And we need to use the market to attract the investors in. So at another meeting, let's fine-tune that. But I'm really concerned that you might be turning away, you would be turning away investors, especially if, Ernie, ba't ang taas naman ng 21? Is that pesos or percent?
We were kind of figured ERC will drop it, so you put the hedge.
No, but Ernie, that 14 pesos, the fuel is only about 9, 10 pesos.
Well,
the
sir,
rest is for O&M, for...
If you look at the ILP, the 0.32 liters per kilowatt hour times the cost, if it's diesel, if you're running, Mr. Chair, on diesel, that will amount, the old diesel cost, no? that will be amount about 13 pesos. So you get paid 13 pesos or 12 pesos fuel plus
What's
the
diesel
34.
13?
It's 0.32 times 40 pesos per liter. Because the 0.32, Mr. Chair, was the consumption rate that was approved by the ERC. So if it's 40 pesos per liter for diesel, then it's 0.32 times 40, about 12 bucks. Plus,
correct?
Plus a little bit of O&M, I think it's 0.38 or 34 for O&M. So what we're saying, Mr. Chair, is that the ILP just reimburses you purely for your variable fuel and variable, nothing on capex. That's why it should be really the it's not even enough incentive for you to maintain your equipment. So that's why it's got to be more than that. So it's got to be anywhere, put it between variable cost plus, of course, the high of 21. No? But maybe if the ERC would consider, Mr. Chair, is one way is just to have one cap, no? And drop the 32 to 17 or 18, and that should be it, because that rather than putting a secondary cap on the WESM when the WESM is supposed to reflect true market pricing. No? If you have excess supply, then the prices are low. If you have shortage, and the prices are high. But we do understand that ERC is concerned about the consumers.
Let's not reinvent the wheel. No,
Yes.
I mean, there are other jurisdictions that have this secondary cap, like Australia. What is that? New South Wales, Sydney. Which one? New South Wales. They have the secondary cap,
New South Wales.
but theirs is a 7-day.
Yes.
Ours has been telescoped to 3 days, which makes it more difficult for somebody to make his projections.
Sir, I just asked permission if we can actually, but the ERC has actually come up with a new secondary cap, which has the same cap, 6245, but it's now on a 7-day rolling and a higher cumulative threshold of 9,020. So it's
It's 9 pesos.
yes, and then it also already considers, sir, it was actually computed based on the market prices that were on historical market prices for the off-peak and the two peak periods, and at a high of the cap of 32 during the peak period. The oil plants will also still be allowed to recover any deficiency on the difference of the 6245 and the actual fuel costs. So because in the first place it will only become 6245 if they breach the cumulative price threshold. But now that it's 7 days and now that it's at 9,000, they actually will be able to bid at more intervals at a higher price within the cap of 32. So when Mr. Pantanco was saying that we can actually move it down to, we can just do away with the secondary cap and have just a bid cap at a lower rate, 17 pesos, 18 pesos, or even 20 pesos, what is difficult there is also the fact that it could now lead to the GenCos gravitating towards that towards that price at 20 pesos, and at the end of the day, at the billing cycle, you will have an effective settlement price of 20 pesos instead of your normal the regulated price average of 6 pesos in the market. So all of these will have to be considered when you lower it at a particular price. Like in other jurisdictions, you have price caps of 5,000 in Australia. But it's more than our 32 pesos. It was more than our 62 pesos. What 62 pesos in Australian? in Australia. I think they compute it on the value of lost load. In our case, that would have been 164 pesos. In our case, but
Value of lost load, VOLL.
yes, VOLL, yes, sir. But maybe ED can also.
Yes, go ahead.
With your permission, the purpose of having the offer cap is actually for signaling also that during extreme market conditions, there may be really instances when prices can go through the roof, and this can still be considered as valid prices. But the purpose of this is really to signal the market. If we lower it towards say lower than 32.
All right, let's Kakuan run an exercise and for the elucidation of the committee members. Apply the primary cap to what happened last year. If we have had a cap of 32 pesos, what would have been the final price for generation of Meralco? Umabot kayo ng 9 pesos, di ba? Diba? From around 5, no? Pumutok ng 9. Now, if a 32 peso cap had been in place, what would have been that Meralco price to the consumer? Then secondly, a second exercise is apply the secondary cap. If a secondary cap had been in place, what would have been the final generating cost to the Meralco consumer? Can you do that? Anyway, you've been doing this. You've been conducting this. So
Give us time, sir.
yeah, your staff could probably just do it in one afternoon. No? Okay? All right. Now, what we're saying is that we want some predictability. You cannot just keep on changing the rules. So changing it already is bad enough. A guy who comes in and puts up a plant, then all of a sudden he wakes up and says, "Oh no, there's now a cap." That makes things different, and that we're not the only pebble on the beach. I mean, people with $200, $500 million to invest, they're going to pick where they want to put their money. They can go, if they want to come to ASEAN, they can go to Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia. So it isn't like they will come here and have to come here. No, they don't. And then the guys who are disadvantaged are our locals already, those who are already in the industry. So we want to make sure that we want to say, okay, this is what you can expect as far as the market for pricing will be concerned for peakers for the next 5-10 years. Para makakakon sila. Now, hydros. Mr. Secretary, earlier we discussed upstairs we were going to encourage the hydros to increase their capacity. Now, I understand that if we got the ERC to exempt certain hydropower plants from the must-offer rule, they'd be able to save up enough water to give us an additional 100, 200 megawatts during summer. Would you like to explain that, Miguel?
Yes. A hydro that can store water. That water can be stored for...
Which are the hydros first that can store water?
Pantabangan, Magat, Ambuklao, Binga, San Roque. However, they have a rule curve, and priority is always given to irrigation. But sometimes they are above the rule curve. What they have above the rule curve, they can offer that to the market. But if the price spikes at that time, they have to offer it, and they have to deplete the water. And if those price spikes were to happen before April 11th or 14th and 15th week of April 2015, they might run out of water. I think Pantabangan is running low already. Magat is at 71 percent.
Where Pantabangan, right, is available only at 64
Yeah.
out of the 120 because of the very low water level,
Yeah.
I think, which we conveyed to the Secretary.
So let me recap. An exemption from the ERC must offer rule will enable
Sorry, it's Western rule, sir.
PEMC, I'm sorry, will enable certain hydros that are able to save water, not the runoff river. To what volume? To what amount of?
It depends on
I know.
the rain.
Give us a low and a high.
It's the volume above the irrigation rule curve. They have to release a certain amount of water.
Yes.
To the extent they're above that, that water can be saved for a critical period.
If you were to estimate or guesstimate, what would that mean?
Quite frankly, in the last storm, we got very little water because we're on the wrong side of the mountain. Both Pantabangan, the biggest are Magat and Pantabangan, and they didn't get much rain. The ones that got a lot of rain are the ones that can't store much. I don't know about San Roque, though. How much the water?
Is San Roque here? Yeah.
Well, San Roque Reservoir is also below the rule curve now.
So
Yes.
in other words,
Below
too
the
late.
upper rule curve.
In other words,
It's too late. There's no water above the rule curve unless another storm comes from the other direction,
so you're really looking for storms because
or rain, or tropical depression.
no, because we know that there's hardly any rain between December to
Yes.
March, no?
Yes,
So either you have it now or
Yes.
you don't have it now.
that's right.
And you're saying you don't have it now.
No.
Pantabangan.
Yes, sir. We are below the rule curve, so we have water, but we cannot use the water unless NIA authorizes us to use the water.
So
because
even
we're
if
below.
the ERC were to exempt all of you from the must offer rule, you don't have the water.
You don't have the water.
So you should have had the water today already.
Yes, we should have been saving it for the last 3 months, for April.
The last 3 months.
Yes.
So therefore, I think everybody in this chamber, please pray that we get another typhoon.
Well, not a typhoon, but rain.
Not down south, Mr. Chair. We got clobbered already.
In the last
Yolanda, in EDC. So
Well, Mr. Secretary, we can't defend then on the additional 150 megawatts that we were thinking we could get from the hydro.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'm a very optimistic person, so I feel that
You
there
mean
will
to
be,
say you think another typhoon is going to come?
to some extent, okay. I'm still hoping that there'll be rains that will be coming in. So whatever that is, okay, if we have additional water sometime in the near future, I think we're willing to sit down with all the hydros on how we can conserve water. I think the PEMS is concerned really at this point in suspending must offer is selective suspension. If we have to suspend must offer, it has to be suspended. You don't release water at all, rather than you choose when to release and you choose when not to release. So I think it's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. We just have to make sure that it's not selective. If ever there is water, Mr. Chair, even at this point, even before the water comes in, the hopeful water that will come in, I think we can sit down with the hydros and talk about not only suspending the must offer rule, but not really generating when it's not necessary.
So therefore, what you're saying is that we don't really need any special powers for that. This is something within the power of the DOE and the ERC.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Now,
Mr. Chair, if I may, we also had a discussion with SNAP at last Friday, and they did say, as far as Ambuklao and Binga is concerned, that even if you suspend the must offer rule, really they're running it on an optimal level at this point, especially because they're not under NIA, any contract with NIA. But basically, ang sabi namin, again, I repeat, we're willing that it can be suspended, but not on a intermittent level. It's no generation at all to save for March 1. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, except to what they've signed up, the contract.
Yes, except with NIA, because
they have ancillary and they have NIA.
yes, that is correct.
You have ancillary, no? With Magat?
In Magat, yes.
How many megawatts?
One unit, 90 megawatts.
99 watts. Okay. Now, for CBK, Mr. Ikizawa, how many, if we raise water level in Kaliraya Dam from 288 to say 289 meters, how many additional megawatts can CBK produce?
I am not positioned to reply to your question because we are just operating power station. In terms of the order from MGCP system operator, but I understand that if we raise the water to 289, many illegal settlers will be affected by flooding.
Yeah,
So
we're going to settle that. If we can move the illegal settlers, then we can move. We will move them for the simple reason that the government has a budget for that. The national housing, and this is a continuing program under the what's the department of Vice President Binay? The HUDCC, di ba? Yeah.
So physically, we can operate 4 units at the same time. It generates 720 megawatt.
Okay.
But if, of course, there is a limitation of the water. So if we continue to generate 720 megawatt, for example, 2 days, from Monday, Tuesday, on Wednesday, there will be no more water for generation.
Okay. No, but I'm saying you've already raised the water level by another meter. So that should give you additional water to power your 750 megawatt plant. You're saying that by Wednesday you won't have any more water. But
Yeah.
you do pump water every night from 11 o'clock to 6 o'clock.
Yes, Chairman. If we can raise the water to 289 meters, perhaps we can generate 4 units at the same time for a longer period. Means until Thursday or Friday. That
Okay.
is our expectation.
All right. Now, suppose we ask you at the expense of Mandy, because Mandy has plenty of money anyway, so Pisalm, to extend your pumping hours by 3 hours a day. So instead of beginning your pumping at 11 p.m., you begin at 8 p.m. Of course, rates more expensive. But if rates were not an issue, if you get an additional 3 hours of pump time, reverse pump,
If additional 3 hours pumping will be converted to 2 hours more generation.
2 hours what?
More 2 hours longer generation every day.
You can actually generate for 2 more hours a day.
Every day.
Now, your generation every day goes up and down. It depends upon what NGCP calls you to generate. The reason for this hearing is to find additional power between 11 o'clock and 8 o'clock. So we don't need it. We don't need powers for 24 hours. In any case, you're pumping from 11 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the morning, so that's you're generating zero. You're consuming actually power from 11 o'clock to. Anyway, we can sit down. We will be flying to CBK this Saturday, Mr. Ikizawa, the committee, by helicopter, and we will check out the problems you might have with civil society around there. But the military contingent up there is already taking stock of who will be affected if we raise water levels half a meter, 1 meter. Is Napocor here? Yes. Where is Miss Gladys?
Well, she's attending the board meeting that was actually scheduled.
The board meeting of
National Power Corporation.
But the chairman's here.
Yes.
No, you're not.
Well, in line with the.
All right, please tell her I'd like to talk to her today.
Okay.
Because I precisely on the CBK, the Lake Kalilaya problem. If we can resolve that, then we'll be able to get an extra. How many extra megawatts will you be able to give us daily, Mr. Ikezawa?
We did not analyze this in case of.
I'm not asking you to commit. I'm just asking you to give me a good guess.
Mr. Chair.
How many?
Mr. Chair, maybe I could help.
Oh, yes.
Rolly Bacani from Transco. A 1 meter increase in elevation will give us at least 8,000 megawatt hours in Kalayaan. So the 8,000 megawatt hours is good for about 44 hours for one unit.
8,000 megawatt hours a week?
No,
a day.
That's the volume of water that you can convert to energy. 8,000 megawatt hours, at
Okay.
least.
Can you teach us amateurs on how to? What is that in megawatts?
That is equivalent to about 170 megawatts for about 45 hours.
The whole week?
Well, it depends on how
There's
long.
only 24 hours in one day.
No, 45 hours.
4
for 170
to
megawatts.
5 hours. Hey, that's pretty good. That's 170 megawatts for 4 to 5 hours.
45. 4 and 5. 4, 5.
4, 5?
Yes.
But there's only 24 hours in a day. See, I
Well,
told
you can
I'm
use it for 4 days.
Okay.
For 24 hours.
They'll have to restock, refill the lake every night, di ba?
You cannot refill it in 1 day. I think the 1 meter increase, you can do it in 1 week, including pumping during.
Can you meet
Saturday
with
and
us
Sunday.
after this committee hearing so that we can discuss it further without wasting time? That's a technical situation that I'd like to be able to
Okay,
understand.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Secretary, finally, let's get to the emergency powers that the palace is asking for, that the House has said that they have granted. What emergency powers specifically, or special powers? Let's not call it emergency powers because the word emergency doesn't even appear in the law, no? In Section 71. You need the authority to the House granted very sweeping powers, which, as you know, I've already told the media, would not be necessary. But there are certain things that you and I discussed earlier that you thought should be included in the Senate resolution. Would you like to go on record?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I think the issue of the ILP right now is how to operationalize it, considering that they actually do cross boundaries in terms of franchise and contestable and captive, and rest, of course. What is important to us, Mr. Chair, is on the fact that the current ILP right now allows the ILP or the self-generating to run their units during red alert. In fact, based on the experience of Meralco, Veco, and even Davao Light, you run ILP when there is a brownout, not before it happens. Okay, because that is really the nature of ILP right now that they have. In some cases, I did notice that NGCP would call on Meralco to run their ILPs if they already foresee that there will be a red alert. But if it actually happened right away, then you'll have a brownout first and then you run ILP. My concern, Mr. Chair, is if we be allowed, okay, to use the ILP even during yellow alert, so that we don't have to wait for the brownout to happen and use the ILPs when we have a yellow alert. Now, I understand that the yellow alert is 647 megawatts more or less. Okay, that's what you have to fulfill. But we can make a study, because ILP is not your normal power plant. We can make a study to actually reduce the threshold need be to an acceptable level. Doesn't have to be 647. Can be 300, 400. We can make a study with NGCP, but allow ILPs to run on yellow alert.
Or close to the actual shortage. If you're only short 200, then you run ILP on yellow alert for 200, diba?
Yes, Mr.
You don't
Chair.
need to run the entire 600. Or
Yes, it can be the size of Masinloc, for example, 315 megawatts. Or we choose a medium-sized power plant rather than the biggest plant as a basis for running ILPs.
Well, if you're predicting your load to drop, say, the next day, and you call participants to fire up their own gensets the next day, you already would have more or less an idea what your shortage would be, say, at 11 o'clock tomorrow. Diba? And that's all you have to fire up.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Hindi naman lahat ng ILP, only those that we need.
Yeah. All right. What other powers? But you don't need those powers. Those are already within the President's powers today.
Actually,
You
Mr.
just put that in the agreement, the ILP agreement that is being drafted between your department, the ERC. I think the PEMC is involved, the PIPA, the RESA.
I think, Mr. Chair, why it needs special powers is because if even on red alert, this particular capacity is passed on to the people, okay, it will be included in the rates, whether they're included in the rates of NGCP or on the generator or on Meralco, on the DU, it will have to be passed on to the people, and that's why before you actually do that, you need to revise the rules of ERC when it comes to ILP. And I'm not sure at this point, there has never been any petition at this point to actually revise that rule, although from my understanding, wala pang petition dito, Mr. Chair, although my understanding is that ERC has gone ahead with public consultation, but there is really no petition at this point to actually do that. So with that being passed on to the people,
So what do you need? You need the President to be given that power under the resolution to
basically run the ILPs on yellow alert, and with the cost. Ito na ang sa amin, Mr. Chair, because on the House version, what they're saying is that will be passed on to the government. But in this case, in the normal method, if it will be passed on to the people, we're saying that
by people you mean the customers.
to the
Yeah.
customers, to the consumers. What we're saying is that there should be a resolution bypassing ERC in this case and simply saying that the additional cost will be borne by the consumers. Otherwise, we'll have to go to a series of public consultation on this.
No, why don't we just say the ERC is hereby exempted from conducting public consultations in this particular, or you can have one consultation in Metro Manila. You know, you normally have to have a round of consultations now around Luzon. By regions, how do you, on what basis do you determine how many consultations you have? Would it be one per region?
Mr. Chair, it depends if the resolution, the proposed resolution, will affect all the stakeholders in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao grid. So we conduct.
Teka muna, here we're talking only of Luzon. Di ba?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So that's 5 regions.
It can be just a consultation in the Luzon or in our head office. As mentioned earlier by the
How
Secretary.
many hearings? That's all I'm asking.
It can be as less as 1 hearing or 2, it depends. But we have gone already with the amendments to the existing ILP rules, except that, as mentioned by the Secretary, our amendments, our proposed amendments, which we have already subjected to public consultation, would only be activated when there is a red alert already, and the incremental...
Well, the Secretary is asking for yellow alert.
Yes, Mr. Chair. And...
but that's within your power also to approve.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
You don't need special powers from us to, whether it's red alert, yellow alert, pink alert, blue alert.
Yes, Mr. Chair, but that would entail additional cost, because if the ILP participants will be asked already to...
That would entail additional cost to the consumer.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, I agree. And you need what? To hold consultations to be able to determine whether you to approve that particular.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So, Mr. Secretary, maybe we can have some computations and have a technical working group meeting after this to see whether the government swallows some of that, or... And here we're only talking about yellow alert, no? Yellow alert expense, not red alert.
Yes, yellow alert. And just to emphasize, Mr. Chair, in the yellow alert, it doesn't mean that the entire self-generation cost is passed on to the consumers, because you still have the market. You actually put it in the market.
Okay.
And then the difference is what is passed on to the people between the cost of self-generation and the market prices.
Teka muna, if you put it in the market, it'll be subject to the secondary cap. Ganun ba yan?
Yes, Mr. Chair, if the quantities will be redeclared and be traded in the market, then they'll be subjected to market prices.
But
So still, there will be something left over
Yes.
for the...
Meron pa rin, Mr. Chair, kahit ma-secondary cap.
Okay. So, okay, we can, if you prepare the language, we can include that in the Senate version of the resolution. I would like to already go on record that I would not recommend to our members that we exempt anybody from the VAT, because this will screw up the BIR computation. Anyway, the VAT is a very small portion, and in Cebu, it's never been an issue. So why make an issue out of something that has already been historically proven to be not a problem? Don't invent. Second, we will not force participation of any genset owner in the ILP. It should be voluntary, Mr. Secretary. No, I understand there were. I don't recall. I've read so many versions of the House resolution. The House resolutions use the word "shall," no, which is mandatory, and the Senate would not be agreeable to forcing anybody to join the ILP. In other words, I'll tell you something. I'll put it on record. I've been very pleased by everybody's cooperation. Whether I talk to the generators or the DUs or especially CBK and KEPCO, they never gave us a hard time. They said yes right away, and they always found ways, or they're looking for ways to make their commitment come true. The same with Petron, the same with Shell. So it's been a typical bayanihan spirit that we've found, and we're very, very happy. So I don't think it's necessary to say we're going to put you in jail or penalize you because you didn't join the ILP. We think that it would make matters worse. We'd probably be taken to court for doing that. Then there's also the exemption from, Mr. Secretary, the Biofuels Act.
Biofuel, that's right.
For the gas plants, particularly the Ilihan. There's
another one, Mr. Chair. The I don't know how they worded it, but it's the permitting side of new additional capacity coming in, committed and additional. If the permitting can be suspended until after the critical period.
I would like to warn you now that the environmentalists, particularly some champions we have in the Senate, were already upset when they saw that. They were upset that yung pinaghirapan nila, yung Clean Air Act, yung Clean Water Act, are just suddenly going to be set aside and say, hindi, exempted kami dyan. First, how do you exempt something temporarily? If it's just to fast-track the permit of one or two plants, and I don't know which plant we can activate in such a short period of time. They tend to use the, what is that plant? The Redondo, the RP Energy, plant, but that's not really an environmental issue anymore. That was thrown out by the Supreme Court, hindi ba? You can't nod your head, Miguel, because the record won't pick up your response. You say yes. You say yes.
Yes, it's been picked up by the Supreme Court.
Pardon?
It's in the Supreme Court.
It's in the Supreme Court, but on another issue, not the Kalikasan. The Kalikasan was thrown out.
That's right. It was thrown out by the
They
court.
disapproved your ECC.
They determined that all leases and ECCs are invalid.
Right. So maybe we can discuss that, Mr. Secretary. And Mr. Secretary, we know you have a family emergency. We're going to pray for your father. Why don't you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We hope you don't run into any typhoons on the way back to Tacloban.
I hope all the typhoons will be in the
Will be in
Luzon
the sun.
area.
It has
That's
to
what
be
we
in the
need.
sun. So
Thank you,
we
Mr.
have-
Chair.
Yes, Dan.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make a comment on the VAT, because when we surveyed our members, we have an estimated...
Because you have tax-exempt members, right?
Well, we have... During the initial discussion with DOE and the JCPC, the impression... What we told our members is there's a possibility of VAT exemption and no income tax on the reimbursement. And some of them went to their corporate headquarters to present and therefore got the approval to express commitment to ILP. So
Well, we'll have to talk to them because, you're only talking to one half of Congress, which is the lower house.
yes, Mr. Chairman. That's why I just wanted to express that concern that
If
we
they
will
cannot
have-
use the VAT, then I think Congress would be amenable to exempting them from VAT. But if they have input VATs, it doesn't make any difference.
There's no input VAT, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, then we'll have to exempt those in the
Industry.
in the industry in the PESA.
Yes.
Because SAPI is not the only one that's
Tax exempt,
a participant in the PESA, no?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so let's do a technical working group on that, and we can
Thank
include
you.
that in our.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anything? Yes, Ernie.
Mr. Chair, if you will allow me, just a correction of the nomenclature on the minutes discussed earlier.
Yes, I'm sorry, Ernie.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just a clarification on the nomenclature I mentioned earlier regarding Avion. Number one, the April 15, it is actually the start of the reliability testing. So these are 2 units, so we expect that maybe after about a couple of weeks, the units will be reliable. So it's a reliability testing, not a commissioning. The second point, Mr. Chair,
What's
is
the
that
difference between reliability testing and commissioning?
reliability testing is to make sure contractually that the unit will run for 30 days at rated capacity continuously. So it's a contractual testing between a supplier and the owner. But normally, when you look at reliability, if your unit's been running reliably for about a week, and we're only looking at 2 units of Avion, after a week, we will know already whether these units are reliable or not. It's just the fulfillment of the contractual obligation that requires a 30 days. So we will start our reliability testing on April 15. So what we're saying is, after about a week, we should more or less know, or 2, we should already know that we're reliable or not. No? The other point, and I guess for the DOE, just to mention to the Secretary, Avion can run on liquid fuel. However, San Gabriel cannot. I think he mixed up the two. San Gabriel, the 414 megawatt that we intend to commission by summer or February or March of 2016, cannot run on liquid fuel. We did not design it to run on liquid fuel. But Avion is contracted to run on both liquid fuel and gas. It's just a correction.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair. Thank you.
Is there anybody who would like to add, subtract, object, amend anything that's been said here today? All right, because after this, I'll merely suspend, and we will be having maybe 2 or 3 technical working groups. ERC would be one, and maybe with the RESA. And the thing is, the committee is willing to consider passing a resolution that would give the special powers to the President based on the need for those special powers. But the committee has never been in favor of leasing or buying gensets from abroad, which would have resulted in a tremendously high addition to our costs. The committee is also looking to find a way to exempt from the biofuels act KEPCO Ilihan. We will do that either by amending the Biofuel Act itself and putting the amendment in there, or just giving the power to the President to grant the exemption. But although in the current biofuels law there is no mention of exemptions, we had previously thought that the DNR would be allowed to exempt certain players from certain provisions in the biofuels law. So we will work with you, Mr. Yun.
Yes.
Would you like to say something? You turned on your mic.
So nothing.
Thank you.
Thank you
Now,
very much.
NGCP, who's representing NGCP here? NGCP, I'd like to ask the ERC in front of NGCP. Have you approved all the ancillary services of NGCP?
We have approved them provisionally, Mr. Chair.
So they're complete now? They've already given you contracts for regulating, for contingency, for dispatchable?
Based on the information, there's no pending application with us, Mr. Chair.
All right. And NGCP, we're going to have to work with you so that PEMC or you will be designated the administrator. What's the term for it? It's ILP, for the contestable side. And the reconnection, sorry. Huh? Administrator? Right. We understand that there's some resistance there, but we're willing to amend the charter of the NGCP, the lightning amendment, so that you'll have a higher comfort level that this is something that would fall within your domain. Okay, so I'll talk to Big Boise one of these days in case that is necessary.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just a note, Mr. Chair. For on behalf of First Gas, if KEPCO will be granted an exemption from the Biofuels Act during this period of time, that the same be allowed on First Gas, because if there are any savings that we do incur as a result of using pure diesel, we will be passing on the savings to our customer Meralco.
Yes, but that's not your substitute fuel. Your substitute fuel is condensate.
It's condensate or diesel, Mr. Chair,
I
depending
see. But
on which available.
But you've never actually used diesel before, no?
We are currently using diesel now, Mr. Chair. We're filling up on
Biodiesel?
diesel. Yes.
Oh.
We're currently building. Our machines are capable of using. However, if there is any cost savings as a result of using pure diesel, that will be allowed as well to use pure diesel. So we'll pass on the savings to
gas
Meralco.
plants. All of the natural
Thank you,
gas
Mr.
plants.
Chair.
And I guess we will include, Mandy, the New Energy World, CCGT. Would that be considered a gas plant? LPG?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So all right. Maybe you can help us with the language there, Mandy.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, from the economic point of view, we invited here two representatives from the Foundation for Economic Freedom, Dr. Epictetus Patalinhug and Mr. Eddie Gana. Ling, did you have anything? Mr. Gana?
I guess, Mr. Chairman, the main concern of FEF was whether the emergency powers would grant the President the ability to make...
Special powers.
The special powers would grant the President the ability to make long-term, expensive commitments for a very short-term problem, and it doesn't seem that is so. So I think we're okay with
yes, we're going to be very careful there. I mean, remember we've had a painful experience in '92 when Congress was asked to pass the Emergency Power Crisis Act, giving the government a blank check to sign up take-or-pay agreement for 25 years without public bidding. And so we did. They did that, and we over-ordered at very, very high prices on top of that. And I don't think the Filipino people will forgive us if we're going to do that all over again. So, no, we're going to be very specific as to what special powers we would authorize the executive department, not only the president, but the executive department, insofar as the need to generate additional capacity for 2015.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if my colleague, Professor Patalinhug, could have said it.
All right. Now, any more comments? Mandy, would you want?
Your Honor, I just wanted to add, based on our conversation this morning, you're asking if CBK, if instead of pumping at 11 p.m. at night, you start at 8 p.m., 3 hours less. You're asking what would be the hit to Pisan, what losses? It's roughly 37 million, Your Honor.
A day?
37 million per month, Your Honor.
Kaya ninyo yan. I don't even have to put...
which translates to roughly 3.5 per kilowatt hour. Times 3 units, times 3 hours, Your Honor.
What's 3.5? 3.5 what?
3.53 pesos. 3.53 pesos per kilowatt hour, Your Honor.
To the consumer? No, only for your cost.
For the cost of Pisan, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Just for the cost of Pisan.
But that's 37 million a month.
37 million loss per month to Pisan, Your Honor.
I mean, no, not loss. An additional expense of 37 million.
Additional cost, Your Honor, yes.
Which we can authorize to be taken from Malampaya.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. I said that and Elmer starts smiling right away, All right, so any more reactions or comments? There being none, we will hereby suspend this hearing and convert it to a technical working group, and we shall be inviting you to attend some of those sessions if needed in the future. In the meantime, if you wish to attend those sessions, we also would appreciate learning from you, so that if you have anything to contribute, then we would like the committee to benefit from it. By way of scheduling, I think that if we work during the Christmas holidays, we'll be able to come up with a final committee report when Congress comes back, resume sessions on January 19th, and maybe pass this within a week, and then sit down with the House to reconcile both our versions. But in the meantime, I shall be sitting down with Congressman O'Malley. He and I have been meeting a lot so that we won't have too long BICAM sessions between the House and the Senate when the Senate gets to pass its version of the resolution. There being no other matters, we suspend this hearing. Thank you all for coming.